Hi guys, welcome back to Dimitra's Dishes. So this is my first Q&A segment. You guys have asked a bunch of questions and I've been meaning to answer them. And we'll begin by, let's see, I like to write things down, otherwise I work better that way. Somebody wanted to know how we use stand mixers. So this is a stand mixer and you don't need to have one of these. You can have one. It's a great thing to have. It makes life so much easier, especially when you're doing things like whipping up meringues, which take a pretty long time and a high speed. You can definitely do it by hand. It'll just take like triple the time. So it's really nice to have one of these. It's easier because you can use your other hand to like pour in ingredients, and it's just really nice to have one of these. If you don't have it, you can use an electric mixer or like hand whisks or spatulas, but I have this KitchenAid over here, and I'm just going to do a quick demo of really how it comes in the package. It comes with 3 attachments: a whisk, a beater, and a dough hook. The dough hook is really good for making breads, and whenever you're making breads using a stand mixer, it's really high powered, but the motor can burn, so you never want to take it past like the stir or the number 1 speed on here, because if you over mix with breads, you need to mix for at least like between 5 to 10 minutes, and if you do that, the motor will burn if you have it on a higher speed. So make sure when you have the dough hook attachment and you're making a dough, you never go past like speed 2. Okay, 1 is probably the safest to use. So that's the dough hook. You use that when you're making bread doughs. This is the whisk attachment, and this is great for making like whipped creams and meringues or any batter that needs to incorporate lots of air in it. That's this one right here. And this is the regular beater. It's the flat beater. It's great for like making cookie doughs or cake batters and that kind of stuff. Mine, I have all different ones at the restaurant. We have ones that don't flip back like this. They kind of go up and down. It's pretty much your preference, whichever one you want to get. Mine flips back, and you just kind of attach the attachments on here, and then you kind of go with it. It's pretty simple. You always want to make sure you want to start on the low speed, obviously, especially if you don't want to wear your batter or have flour all over the place. It's pretty simple, and it's a great tool to have, but again, it's not a must-have. It's just one of those things that make life much easier. When it comes to measuring ingredients for baking, so in baking, you want to be pretty exact. You can't like add a little bit of this, a little bit of that. When you're baking, you need to have pretty exact measurements. It's not the end of the world if you put a little bit more flour in there, so don't be intimidated by baking. But the best way to measure flour with your measuring cups is you want to take the cup and you want to get in the flour, and you don't want to compact it. You want to kind of like fluff it up and lighten it up. And then either with your finger or with a knife, it's kind of scoop and swipe. You want to scoop lightly and then swipe the top off, and there's a cup measurement. You can use a cup or a third of a cup or half a cup, depending on what your recipe calls for. When it comes to adding brown sugar to a recipe, that's when you compact it. And then regular sugar, obviously, you don't have to fluff it up. You can just kind of take a cup like that and you pour it into your batter, and that's the best way to measure. And that's also a good way to measure with measuring spoons. You want to scoop and swipe, so that way if it doesn't call for a rounded tablespoon or a rounded cup of something, always use the knife to kind of swipe off the excess. But I own a bakery, and sometimes, you know, we do things in a hurry and we put a little more flour into something or a little bit less. The recipe usually works out, but it's even better if you follow it directly to the T. So now, when you're measuring liquids, it's good to have this 4-cup measure and just follow it. It has usually in milliliters and ounce measurements. Just use that. Olive oil. Now, you guys asked me what my favorite olive oil is. I love using olive oil that comes from Kriti. It's just the one that I've been raised on. It's not bitter. It's not too sweet. It's like the perfect olive oil for my liking. And these days I'm using this one. It's called Minos. I mean, I haven't had a bad olive oil from Kriti, honestly, and it's good to make sure it's cold pressed. You want to make sure that it's been verified that it came from Kriti and it's not just like the brand says Kriti or something like that. But any Greek olive oil will be delicious. My dad actually loves Spanish olive oil, so Spanish olive oil is really good. But these days I'm using this one. I've used different ones, but that's the one I'm using these days. And they're not paying me to tell you about the brand, which they should, but I'm just telling you which one I use. Now let's get to another question. Are you professionally trained? No, I am not. I have not gone to culinary school. I have not gone to pastry school, but I do own a restaurant. It's very successful. We've had it for 8 years now. We make all kinds of pastries and cakes, and they look really pretty. They don't look like they came out of a factory. They're rustic, but yet they're still very beautiful, and I can teach you how to make cakes one day on here also. You don't have to be professionally trained. Just know what good food tastes like, experiment with it, and don't be afraid to cook, you guys, or to bake. It's not that hard. Now, we went through that. Feta cheese. I use a lot of feta in my recipes, and I keep saying the donis feta, and I don't ever put it in the description box what I really said, and some of you aren't, it hasn't been really clear. The donis is pretty much the brand of feta cheese that I have on hand most of the time. It's not the only one. As long as you're using sheep's milk feta, it's going to be creamy and it's going to be delicious. The donis is pretty much one of the most popular ones, and so that's why I'm kind of used to saying it. But any sheep's milk feta that you find should be really good. I use the sheep's milk feta mostly like in foods that don't require to be cooked. You can use the cow's milk feta in certain recipes, I let you know, but sheep's milk feta is far superior. It's creamier. Get 2 feta cheeses, guys. Get the sheep's milk feta, any brand, and get a cow's milk feta from the store, and you will definitely see the difference. The cow's milk is kind of harder, not as creamy as the sheep's milk, and even it varies in taste. Experiment and use whichever one that you like the best. Why don't I tell you how much of this and how much of that is in each dish that I make? Like, people are commenting, where are the measurements? Where are the measurements? So I can't remember exactly how much of everything I put in my dishes without holding papers in my hand. So I have everything lined out before we start the show, with measured out, completely ready to go in the recipe. And then I have a website which I always direct you to, and the exact measurements as along with the step-by-step instructions how to make the recipes are on there. So don't freak out. I always put the link directly to the recipe that I'm making on my website. No, in the description box on the bottom of each video that we make here for each episode. And it takes you directly to the recipe that you watch, so you won't have to search for it. You go in the description box underneath each video and it will be there, I promise. Now, sometimes I'm a little bit heavy-handed with like the garlic and the salt and on the show, and it looks like I put much more than is actually stated in the recipe. Writing recipes is really time-consuming, so when I write them down, it is exactly to the T. Everything you need, from teaspoon to cup measurement, the minimum that you'll need to make the recipe taste very, very good. Sometimes I do put a little more, and you can switch things up. Don't worry about it. If something says half a cup of garlic and you don't like that much garlic, put less. If you prefer onion, put onion. You know, it's just a standard recipe, and you can make it, you know, pretty much switch things around to make it however you like. Now, let's see, what else do we have here? Okay, so we went over about the oil. Now, I like to use that olive oil, the olive oil that I just told you about from Kriti, but I only use that in, again, uncooked recipes. I like to use it in salads and dips and that kind of stuff. I do not fry with that oil, even though they do in Greece. They have olive oils coming out of everywhere. They have big barrels of them, because pretty much most of my aunts and uncles have olive trees, and they have endless amounts of olive oil, so they do fry in it. I don't fry in cold pressed olive oil. Sometimes I do fry things in a lighter olive oil. Like, I'll get a pomace olive oil from the supermarket, which I know is not super healthy, but I don't fry often, and when I do, I like to use a very, very light oil. And actually, grapeseed oil is better for frying, or another vegetable oil that's non-GMO preferably, are perfect for frying. I do bake some cakes in those light olive oils as well, but I never cook with my really good cold pressed extra virgin olive oil. And pretty much that's it. Those are the questions, and I hope I've answered them correctly. If you have any more questions, post them down below, and we'll do another Q&A section sometime in the coming weeks. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye, everyone.